conversation about doing this event and having people in the room, I was a little bit worried about how it will go because it's a heavy topic, right? At the end of the day, it may be on a lot of our minds. We may not want to think about it because, like, why create a problem if you don't know about it at this stage? But I think through conversation and through even when I started sending invites out for the event, the responses that I got, a lot of people traveling at this time of the year, so many of them went like, I'm really bummed I'm missing this, which doesn't normally happen. A lot of us attend a lot of events all the time. Normally you're happy to not have to go to one more thing. But it was amazing to see how many people were really upset that they could not make it because it's such a relevant topic today. So thank you once again for making it here. I'm Anjan and I'd like to introduce you to my panel here today. We've got Neha Motwani. Can I have you say hi?
Hi guys.
She is a second-time founder. Luma is her fourth baby. Her first baby was Fraternity. I'm sure you all have heard of it. Once she made all that amazing money off it, she moved towards having two more children, which is a story she's going to get into very soon. So she's a mom to twins, and this is her fourth baby that's come to life as of this month. We've got Dr. Radhika Sheth. She is the medical director at Luma Fertility with 18 years of experience in fertility and reproductive medicine. And then we've got Dr. Vishesha Yadav.
Hi.
She is the senior fertility specialist at Luma with almost a decade of experience and has personally walked through the egg freezing path twice. She's done it herself. She's done it twice. We're going to get to that in a little bit. We had a whole chat about half an hour ago, and it was quite interesting to see how someone who's talking to you about it has also done it herself. So it's not that she's going to be like, you have to do A, B, C, D, these are your only options, etc. I think I love that because Luma is also built by patients, for patients in that sense. Neha's gone through a journey herself, and so has Dr. Vishesha, so I'm really excited for this today. Neha, I'm going to start with this. Why Luma? Why another fertility clinic? And what are you hoping for people to feel today and take away from today?
Thanks Anjan, and thanks everyone for being here. I think I spoke to a few of you. So with me, when I was going through my personal fertility journey, sadly I had to sort of go through almost sort of 6 IUIs, 7 IVF cycles, and it was 3 years of this journey. And as it unfolded, I think the clarity that I had was the experience for Indian women in the fertility landscape in India is very, very broken. There's lack of empathy, there's lack of clear understanding, and we also felt that there were a lot of friction points which nobody was looking at. Essentially, we felt like it was optimized for the doctor and not optimized for us as patients. So that's how actually Luma was developed. We came together and we realized that there are actually a lot of us who, while at different points in our journey, there's a common theme that we actually want to be treated like a person and not be treated like a file. Yeah. Not felt like we're on a conveyor belt, but really felt like this is for me. It's actually addressing what I need at my term, at my own terms, yeah, in my timeline, in my understanding. And hence Luma was built. So like you see, our intent was not to make it look like a clinic, feel like a clinic. We've really tried to keep everything at one place. Yeah. And the intent is very, very patient-centric in the sense that we have a care navigator, a care specialist assigned to every person. There is app, AI, a lot of technology that actually comes into the play to help you take better decisions. And of course, at the helm of it are doctors who've sort of done this, built it, but really the team coming together to give an experience in all walks of fertility, which is designed for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. I want to dive into a little bit about what were the elements that you kept in mind from a patient perspective that make sure that the space doesn't feel like a hectic clinic, like you don't feel intimidated when you walk in. I'm hoping nobody's felt intimidated when they walked in. but it doesn't feel like a serious hospital. Can I just say it doesn't smell like a hospital? Because that happens a lot.
Yes.
And I think sense of smell is so strong in building how a place feels immediately. It's the first thing you pick up on, right, when you walk into a room.
Yes.
So it doesn't smell like one as well, which is great. But what were the, like, let's say, top 3 pain points that you kept in mind while creating this? And of course, I'm assuming these would be inspired by your journey going through a lot of different clinics in India and overseas as well.
Yeah, no, Anjan, I think very valid point. When I went through my journey, I wanted to understand if this was just me or if other women also felt this. You all met Apurva. So Apurva and I have actually met 200 women and interviewed 200 women who've been through their fertility journeys. And what we collated was actually 55 friction points. And we've tried to address each and every friction point with a solution. So for example, like you said, the idea was that the layout should be such that it doesn't feel like a hospital. You shouldn't need to go to 9 different rooms to actually get one consult done. Can you do it in one room?
Yeah.
And so the layout, for example, is the number one thing that we focused on, where it's really designed for the patient who comes in. Care on your chair is what we call it. The second bit is that what we realized in IVF is that the doctor's interaction is, of course, the most critical and what happens clinically, medically, but the periphery of the fertility journey, whether it is naturally, sort of trying pregnancy, IUI, IVF, egg freezing, embryo freezing, any of these journeys, the periphery of coordinating a lot of things, which is blood work, injections, appointments.
And schedules for all of this,
Exactly,
right? Like
yeah.
when you're supposed to take an injection, when are you supposed to do your
Correct.
blood work?
Correct.
Yeah.
So it feels very daunting and it's like a project in itself.
Yeah.
So what we've done is that we've taken all that and created a project manager for
Right.
our IVF journey
Right.
in form of a care navigator. And I think this, we believe, could be a game changer, because if we had that as patients when we were going through it,
Yeah.
it would have been really, really helpful.
Right.
And I think the third element of what we are doing is, really driven by technology and convenience.
Yeah.
For example, we wanted the clinic to be open 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. so that we don't have to only come when the doctor's available at 2 p.m. and figure out an excuse from work to
Right.
make it to the appointment,
Yeah.
right? So really geared towards, again, we will meet you where you are rather than you coming when we want you to come. So in that sense, we have an app. The Care Navigator really makes it around what is convenient for you, while of course ensuring that the medical side, the success rates, the outcomes, all that is sort of really, really core, and that stacks up. The idea is that how do you make it very convenient and centered around the patient on all the other aspects.
I believe the app also allows, correct me if I'm wrong, allows you to message in real time, right? And of course, the doctor responds to you when they're sort of available, but it's not a week later. Basically, I feel like with most health things, right, the minute you're feeling something's off, we're on Google. And you're either pregnant or you've got cancer or you're dying tomorrow. That's usually what you hear, but that's what Google tells you. Like something critical is happening, and like by the time you exit this tab, you're over, essentially. But I love that instead of going through Google, you can actually, on the app itself, you can message a credible medical expert who will tell you whether you're spiraling in your head, is it PMS that's driving you nuts, like what is going on, it'll tell you everything. So I really, really love that. Thank you for that. Dr. Radhika, what I'd like to know from you is, what the hell is egg freezing? Because I feel like it's a term that's thrown around so loosely. But what exactly happens, and how is it an option today and it maybe wasn't an option before?
So great. So we are met to discuss egg freezing,
Yes.
and I mean that's the most fundamental reason that we are meeting today. So basically, we all know that as women, for some reason, at the age of 35, after the age of 35, our egg producing ability somehow declines. It doesn't really happen so much for a man. Don't ask me why. Maybe God is a male, that's why.
I'm convinced.
But for us, we have to bear the brunt of aging, okay, and quite significantly. So, and we have choices to make. So when I'm 35, maybe I have some career goal, maybe I'm middle management and I can't afford to have a baby now because it would set my career back by another 5 years. At the same time, if I wait too long, maybe I'll have problems in conceiving. So that's where egg freezing actually comes from, that it gives you the choice to keep your fertility under your own control and yet have a baby when you want, when you feel it's right, or when you feel you're emotionally ready. So that I feel
And
is
financially
one,
ready.
Financially
Like,
ready.
that's a
too.
big
Yeah,
one
yeah,
as well
yeah,
because
yeah.
kids are expensive. I'm sure my mom agrees.
Depends on how much you put up with all their tantrums, but yes, they are
But
expensive.
yeah. Sorry, go on.
So that is social egg freezing, and also there is medical egg freezing where unfortunately girls, some of them even young at age, may need to undergo ovarian surgeries, which reduces what is known as the egg producing ability. Not always, but it could potentially reduce. Or some women need to undergo cancer chemotherapy, and chemotherapy spares nothing. I mean, so hair gets lost and all rapidly growing cells do deteriorate or go down in number, and eggs also go down in number.
Right.
So basically before starting chemotherapy also it's an option to consider. So now what do we do actually in an egg freezing? So basically there's a small workup that we do. Most of the people or most of the women who opt for it do it for social reasons. I mean, most of us over here who have collected would probably be interested in that. So we do a small basic workup where we do an ultrasound for something which is known as antral follicle count. So there is something like seeds of eggs or precursors of eggs that we do an ultrasound to check whether the count is normal or otherwise. And we also do a blood test called AMH, which stands for anti-Mullerian hormone. And there is a correlation between the two. So if your antral follicle count and AMH, if your antral follicle count is normal, it means that most likely your AMH would be normal. But let's say that it's all normal and I'm just 30, but I don't know when I'm going to marry or I don't know when I'm going to have my baby. It's better that I consider freezing my eggs so that I can be, a bit laid back and I can do whatever I can pursue my goals, and maybe at 35 I can think of then conceiving.
Yeah.
So that's what egg freezing is about. Now, how do we do it? So basically, once we have done the initial workup, from the second day of the period, we start the girl on certain injections, which are hormones, and they're given for a period of 9 to 12 days. So they're given deliberately to try to make multiple eggs grow. So how many is good? It depends upon the age. So I would say something between 10 to 20 is what we are looking at. And after this course of about 9 to 10 days, around the 13th day of the period when she's about to ovulate, we don't allow her to ovulate.
Okay.
So otherwise, if they rupture, if the eggs already break, we cannot retrieve them. So there are ways and means to do that. And around the 13th day, by a small surgical procedure, we retrieve those eggs and we freeze them immediately.
Okay.
So they're frozen in a material called liquid nitrogen, which is at minus 196 degrees Celsius. Technical, but important to know, it's not just a fridge.
I was gonna say, isn't that also the ice cream thing?
Yeah, so dry ice is something
it's
similar.
basically that,
But
right?
this is,
But this is just
more-
it's just getting
this
out
is
of your
more,
body.
Yeah. This is more tech savvy. That
Got
isn't.
it. Yeah.
So, and then these eggs are frozen. So technically they could be frozen lifelong, but by law in India, we can freeze it for a period of up to 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
Yeah. And let's say that 2 years later you decide to have a baby. It doesn't mean that you have to use these frozen eggs. You may as well try naturally, and hopefully you may even conceive. But should you not conceive, then these eggs serve as a backup.
Got it.
So then you approach the clinic again. We evaluate your partner's sperm, and once your lining is ready, once your uterus is ready, we thaw as in get the eggs back to normal body temperature, and we inject the sperm into the egg. And the embryo that forms, we transfer back into your uterus.
Got it.
So you can say it's a part of an IVF process.
Got it. So one part of that essentially.
Yeah.
So and can you do the IVF cycle multiple times? I know you can do it after my conversation with Dr. Vishesha, but you're saying one cycle lasts 13 days then.
No, so
Sorry,
what
not
I
IVF,
told,
egg freezing. My bad,
freezing.
the egg freezing cycle. So one cycle takes you 13 days to do it.
This is on an average.
On an average.
So there could be a lady who has got very good reserve and needs less hormone, and she may be ready for an egg retrieval maybe on even day 11 or day 12.
Okay, so it's not necessarily.
Not necessary.
Got it.
And there could be a girl who has got some, it depends on your hormonal footprint, right? So
Right.
there may be some responses which are a bit tardy, and maybe the egg retrieval would be on day 15 or day 16.
Okay.
You could do it multiple times because it depends upon how many eggs are retrieved and how many
right.
eggs we actually want. So that's another question probably.
Right.
So
Yeah, like how many is too many or too little?
So we always like having many, right?
Yeah.
Because what happens is we do not know about the sperm in the future.
Yeah.
So if the sperm is not very good, the more the number of eggs it has to fertilize, the better the chance that there could be at least a couple of good embryos.
Right.
So if the age of the girl at the time of freezing is under 35, then maybe freezing 10 to 20 eggs would be sufficient,
Okay.
so as to give her a 70% chance of
Sort
conception
the
later.
number of eggs you have is the number of chances you have, essentially.
It also depends upon how many children you want. So let's say you
Of
want
course,
more
yeah.
than one child, you may need to undergo more than one round of egg retrieval,
Okay, got
even
it.
if you're young.
Understood. So the 10 to 20 number you're giving is for one
It's
child.
for one child,
pregnancy
70%
attempt.
chance,
Okay.
under the age of 35 at the time of egg freezing.
Got it.
And let's say you want a similar goal, but you're above 35 at the time you're contemplating egg freezing, you may need 2 or 3 egg retrievals.
Understood.
Because you would need a larger number of eggs, so 20 to 30, because not all eggs would be equally good.
Right.
There could be some chromosomal aberrations because of the aging process.
Got it. All right. Thank you for that. I'm going to move to you, Dr. Vishesha. Tell me, you've done this twice. From what I've heard about egg freezing from a few people that I know that have done it as well, they've had a very hard time. So I know that there's a correlation between going through something like this because it is hormonal at the end of the day, and for all the women in the room here, we know how much that can mess with you, right? At the even just the monthly period can mess with you so much that injecting additional hormones for 10, 12, 13 days, how does that have an impact on your mental health? How does that impact your physical health? Do you have to come into a clinic to inject? Can you inject at home? I want to know about your experience as an informed person doing this, because you've studied it, you know about it, and now you also did it yourself. So from that perspective, tell me and tell all of us, please, what that's been like for you.
So as a doctor, I know the medical and scientific part of it very well. So
Yeah.
when I actually decided to do it, I went to the doctor and, I realized I was sitting on the other side of the table. And even though I knew everything about it, I did feel a little anxious as to how it's going to be. But one thing that I regret is, so basically I did this at 33 years old, and then, immediately after that, the second cycle. The reason I did it, because like most of y'all, I was not really sure about the partner. I was not really sure when I want to start a family, whether I'm emotionally, financially ready for it. So because medically I knew this is a very good option, I decided to go for it. The only regret I have is why didn't I do it earlier? Because the time that I actually decided to do it was at 30 years of age, and it took me almost 2 to 3 years to go to the doctor and be like, finally I was
As
like,
it
okay,
does.
I have to push myself.
Yeah.
That's one thing, but otherwise the experience, the process is not really intimidating as it's put out there. Yes, you do have those 10 to 12 days of hormones or injections, but these are given in very titrated doses, and they're all flushed out of your body once the procedure is over. So you don't really have any long-term or
There's no
short-term
lasting
side
impact
effects,
of it.
nothing
Got
at
it.
all. Even if you're going to try and get pregnant naturally in future, this is not really going to come in the way. Because whatever we are trying to do, it's only limited to that period cycle.
To that cycle.
Yeah. Once you get your period again, everything comes back to baseline in your cycle. So for me, those 10 to 12 days, I continued with my work, routine, schedule, everything. As a doctor, it's pretty hectic, but I could go through it, and this just kept happening in the background. And finally, I was on the day of retrieval, and I'm like, oh my God, I actually did go through those 12 days,
Yeah.
and it wasn't that bad. So the egg retrieval happened. Again, it's done under a very short, light anesthesia. So you don't really are asleep post the procedure. You wake up in the next 1 hour or so. You're good to go home on the same day in the next 2 hours. Next day, I resumed back my work. After doing the first cycle, I realized that I do not have as many eggs as needed, like a good number. And so that's when I decided, now I don't want to wait any longer. Let me do the second one.
Let's do it again.
Finish it in that flow. And
It's like getting a tattoo almost. You get addicted to it, like one more.
because the first one wasn't that intimidating. So I was like, I can go through it again.
Yeah.
And by the end of the second cycle, I felt so much reassured. Like
Yeah.
that sense of control that now I don't really have to think about any timeline. I can go back to it whenever I want.
Like unworthy male partners and those things, just not important. Yeah.
Totally. So then post 40 or whenever, those eggs will always give me a better success rate and a higher chance of pregnancy. So my experience was really great. Of course, there were certain things which I experienced during the procedure, and that's when I thought, what things could be made different, and that's what we are trying to do at Luma.
Got it. Thank you. Dr. Radhika, I want to know what's the relation between egg freezing and IVF? These are obviously two different things, but is there a correlation between the two of them? And what's the difference between the two of them?
So egg freezing is part of an IVF process.
Okay.
So in an IVF process, once the eggs are retrieved, the husband's sperm is injected into the egg by a process known as micromanipulation.
So it's fertilized outside.
It's
the body.
fertilized outside. So in vitro fertilization stands for in vitro. Vitro is glass. So
Yeah.
vitreous glass is the test tube.
Right.
So that's why it's also called test tube
Test tube
baby.
baby, yeah.
So in the glass or in a glass test tube or a glass petri dish, we are uniting the sperm and the egg.
Right.
So that is called ICSI, intracytoplasmic sperm injection.
Got it.
And the embryo that forms thereof, embryo is a result of fusion. You can call it a microscopic baby.
Right.
That's what we then transfer into the wife's uterus so as to cause implantation.
Got it.
And 15 days later, we know if she's conceived or not.
All right.
There could be surplus embryos. If there are more eggs and the sperm has been able to fertilize the eggs well, there could be surplus embryos which we could freeze. Just as we can freeze eggs, we can also freeze embryos
Got it.
for use later.
Understood. And let's say you were to do 2 cycles, as you said, you've done, Dr. Vishesha, you've done back-to-back 2 cycles. Let's say even then you've not been able to retrieve as many as you would have liked. How often can you do this?
So there's no really a set number to it.
Like, is there
as
a
we just
point of
discussed.
harm?
Yeah. So there is
Definitely
no,
not like that. I didn't mean to dismiss anyone's experiences, I promise.
I completely
But
this has been a very tested, safe science used throughout the world since the last 45 years. So there's no side effect as such that the number of egg freezing or IVF cycles you undergo can impact your body. Yes, emotionally and financially you need to be prepared for it. But if you have reached your number of eggs, that is, as we said, 10 to 20 is a good number of eggs to be frozen. So some women get it in 1 cycle and some women may even need 3 to 4 cycles. And that's absolutely safe. So
Got
there's
it.
no number to it as such, unless you get to your achieved number.
Got it. Thank you. Neha, back to you. So there's a lot of silence and shame around fertility. I mean, I know that even within, say, parental groups, if it's a kitty, let's put it that way, mother-in-laws are all sort of at their lunch on a Monday afternoon casually. But let's say they're all there and they're living their best life. No one will ever talk about the fact that their daughter or daughter-in-law, anyone is dealing with this. Not that it is lunch table, not that infertility is lunch table conversation, it's really not. But even if someone was to break it, because it is a very emotionally taxing journey, and you know this better than anybody else at this stage. But it's still a topic that needs to be discussed though, right? Because you're not alone in this. It's very common, it's more common than we think. There's more people dealing with it than we know. So how is Luma trying to make this point a conversation that's normalized, that's okay to talk about?
Yeah. No, I think very valid question, and I think you're absolutely right. There is still a taboo associated with doing IVF,
Yeah.
which I honestly don't get how. Because if you take a survey in a room of women who've conceived nowadays, I think 6 out of 10 hands will tell you that they've done IVF.
Yeah.
Or whatever assisted, methods. Right?
Something, yeah. They needed something additional to it.
And
Yeah.
I think it's not about your inability to conceive, but it's actually just everything, right? It could be lifestyle, it could be genetic, it could be 100 factors, right? Like in China, they have linked air pollution to causing fertility issues,
Right.
right? And we have, of course, great fresh air, like we all know in Bombay, right? So it could be anything, right? So I feel like it ends up becoming my inability to conceive, or my daughter or my daughter-in-law's
Yeah, it's very
inability to
like,
conceive.
oh, this person is lesser of a person because of
Correct.
not being able
And
to
I think
conceive.
that is slowly changing, and it's also got to do with the male side, because I think a lot of, fertility is actually 50%
Yeah.
male,
Yeah.
right? So a lot of that is not just the woman talking about it, but also the male partner wanting to talk about it, or wanting the woman to talk about it, right? So I think it's super convoluted in India. I think conceiving is a family topic and not a couple topic. And I think that's sort of changing. And at Luma, I think, our aim is to have women who've done it talk about it,
Yeah.
make it as a part of just being a woman, and there's no sort of shame, taboo attached to it. So some of the things that we're doing is opening forums like this. Even on our Instagram, we're actually having, Unspoken Journey, which is
Yes,
our
that's your
sort of
series.
contribution to just talking about what somebody went through, right?
Yeah.
And everybody's journey is different, but I think it needs to be spoken about. So you're absolutely right. I think we're doing a small scratch in the whole journey, but we're trying to do our bit.
Of course. I love that. No, I love to hear it. I think when I first came here, which was about 2.5, 3 weeks ago, the place wasn't entirely done up yet. There was still wrapping on a lot of the chairs, things like that. But the minute I came in, I was like, this place feels warm. And I think it was the Cove. Right there, the coffee cove, and I was like, you're dedicating a space to coffee. I love this. Like this is brilliant. But I think I love the fact that the space felt really warm. It didn't feel intimidating. And I went through all of the rooms because it wasn't open then. So I actually went inside that chamber, which was very cool. It felt really nice to be in there and just sort of see up close and personal how these things work. And I was immediately convinced. And we had a 1-hour meeting, but within the first 5 minutes, I already knew in my head that I want to do this and I want to be a part of this because it's an important conversation. It's we're all sort of at that age or around that age where it is an important conversation. You have questions, you may go to Google, and then we already discussed what happens when you go to Google with these questions. So I'm glad to have done this. Thank you so much. If there's anything else any of you would like to add, please do. If not,
happy
that's
to
also
take any
okay.
questions if any.
Yeah.
I do want to mention, I've said it to a few of you, but I'll say it again. If post this conversation, you would like to get your AMH test done, which is the blood test, it gives you your current egg count. They're open to doing it for you. It's on the house, it's on Luma, it's part of the event today. If you'd like to do it, please do. If you'd like to just speak to one of the doctors, get a consultant with them, understand what are your options really, at no matter what stage of life you're at, you can do that as well. So yeah, that's all. Thank you so much for making it today, and I hope you enjoyed. And if you have any questions, you can ask now or you can ask independently as well. All good.
I have a question.
That is my mom. The expensive child conversation, that's the one, yeah.
I just wanted to know that these injections that one takes, I mean, you are pumping hormones, right? So, do we have any after effects, like any side effects of all these?
Yeah, so very valid question because it's the most common question that women have.
Because every drug has some side effects.
Right, right. So we are giving you the same hormones which are released by your brain in your every period cycle. We are not giving you anything different. It's just that we are giving it to you in a little higher dose because we want all the eggs in your ovaries to grow so that we can retrieve them. Talking about side effects, a very non-significant kind of side effects that people sometimes complain is they might experience some form of bloating. That's because the estrogen levels go up in your system if we are trying to make so many eggs grow hence. But again, that is very short-lived and is usually experienced in the last 2 to 3 days before your retrieval process. Other than that, no long-term side effects, no side effects when you are even growing older into menopause and post that, when you are trying for a pregnancy naturally, no disruption of your period cycles as such, so nothing permanent. It's all going to be flushed out.
I have a question. Is there like a gap you need to keep between, say, 1 or 2 attempts of egg retrieval, or can you do it like month 1 and then month 2?
Yes. So you can do it back to back because sometimes people just want to get done with it and then get on with their lives. Very much possible. Some women like to give it a gap of 2 to 3 months just to arrange for finances or just emotional readiness.
Right.
But otherwise, you can definitely do it back to back.
And what are the do's and don'ts while you're in that like 12-13 day injection process?
So you continue with your daily routine work schedule, everything. The only thing that we tell you is to be off smoking, off alcohol during that process.
Yeah.
And avoid any intense workout or exercises because we are making your ovaries enlarge a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that. Otherwise, you can continue with your swimming, daily walking, everything continues
And your
as
diet
it is.
and everything stays.
Everything as it is. Nothing
And
changes.
you can freeze them for life, or
How does that work?
Yes, so ideally they can be frozen for eternity, but as Dr. Radhika said, that according to Indian laws, we can't really freeze them for more than 10 years. So then after that, we ask your consent as to what you wish to do with them. So either you can choose to discard them because probably you don't need them any longer, or you can choose to donate it to research.
Oh, I don't know about the donate to research part.
You can't have
No,
it frozen for longer.
you could, but then it needs some approvals. So basically, IVF is governed under a particular law that's called the ART law. So for people who need to freeze it for more than 10 years, they need to take consent from or approval from the national board. So if there is a valid reason, then they do approve. It is possible.
It's possible.
Can we also get into the finances of this?
I had a question on that.
How much does it cost? Because I feel like it's expensive. So
It's not more expensive than having a baby.
Of course.
But otherwise, it's
that's a bit of a lifelong expense. But yeah.
Yeah, so it's 1,20,000 plus the cost of your injections. So that would include freezing or storing your eggs for about a year. Yeah, so and every year there would be an additional charge
is a fee,
because
yeah.
yes, correct. So the fee currently, I mean, it keeps changing because of the consumables that keep varying in price. So currently it's priced at around 40,000 a year for after the first year.
Got it.
40,000 a year to have them.
To continue
To keep,
yes. So we do have certain plans, we'll discuss them, where if you want to freeze them for 5 years so that they are more value for money or easier on the pocket.
And does it change basis the number of eggs that have been retrieved and you're freezing? Because someone made one cycle, someone made.
Correct.
One freeze
So this
last
is for one cycle.
Okay.
So we freeze it in what is known as cryo straws or cryo tops. So one cryo top would hold about 4 eggs. So if this includes, for about 2 cryo tops. So let's say that there are more eggs, then per cryo top it would come, but it's not very expensive. It's at a price of 10,000 rupees extra for each cryo top
It's not
additionally.
being doubled, there's just a slight increase.
Right.
And what we are doing, because when we were going through the friction points that women faced for egg freezing, financial understanding, when to do it, all that sort of really came up. So we have integrated an EMI plan where you actually do a basic payment and the
Okay.
rest can be done on a monthly EMI.
Okay, great.
If you don't find a partner, can you just retrieve your eggs and choose to
Take
have your child?
Yeah, you can take a sperm donor.
Okay, and you can just use.
Yeah. So Indian Act, I mean, you can of course add in doctors. ART Act allows single mother to avail egg freezing and IVF. So if you have retrieved your eggs and you don't want to, you don't have a husband or you want to do it yourself, you can avail for a sperm donor and actually do IVF and be a single mother. In fact, even surrogacy is allowed for single mother.
Is
It
it
depends.
with-
I mean, it's a bit complicated. Surrogacy, especially, is too complicated
That's
to kind
true,
of
yeah.
discuss. And
It
also,
is.
the IVF laws are very dynamic. So, if you ask this question about 2 years ago, there would be, multiple opinions. But that time there was no law as such. There were guidelines, and guidelines said that the lady had to be married or single with and a divorcee, or single with a deceased husband.
Oh,
Currently,
God.
they have kept that. No, it was mentioned. It was
Yeah,
mentioned.
in the act.
So
That's
they're
insane.
silent about it right now. So we take it as it's allowed.
Got it. Yeah, let's not talk about it. It works. We're all happy. It's fine. Got it. Any more questions, anyone?
I don't know if I was not there, but so of course, egg freezing allows you to conceive later, 35, post 35, whenever. But are there other health factors that could make the pregnancy risky? Because egg freezing, yes, conceiving is one, but what about the entire process after a certain age? What other health factors do we have to consider?
So I think nature has made it such that most pregnancies are uneventful and smooth the earlier they are conceived. However, with today's advances in medicine and safety, anesthesia, antibiotics, pregnancy is safe even up at 45 and 46. In fact, again, coming back to the law permits in India, the law permits us to do fertility treatment for up to the age of 50 for the lady. So that was taken into, when that was made, but I would say many factors would have been considered. So health of the lady, chances of complications, and so on and so forth. But every individual is different. So a 35-year-old with uncontrolled BP or uncontrolled sugars for diabetes would stand to have more complications rather than a 40-year-old who's everything, I mean, all parameters are okay. Having said that, pregnancy complications in terms of having higher BP, uncontrolled sugars, or pregnancy-induced diabetes, or chance of miscarriages, something called growth retardation, all this increases after the age of 40 or advanced maternal age. But as I said, it's still pretty safe. It's not something that you need to worry about that if you're 42, oh, I can't get pregnant. But a physician opinion or a general health checkup would definitely help.
Why is there still, I mean, even if, there's still, like you said, like you can still choose to conceive naturally even if you've frozen your eggs, but there's still this mindset that it's better to conceive naturally than via frozen eggs or IVF. Like, is that just a regressive school of thought, or is there some scientific difference when you're conceiving naturally versus when you're, when it's IVF or?
So I believe, and I think most of us would agree, that there is nothing as great as natural when it comes to anything at all. Anything at all. So when we try to define nature, okay, science also doesn't have the answers to everything as of yet.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why natural is always preferred, whether it is IVF, whether it is birthing, whether you speak about anything. Natural is something which I feel is always preferable over anything that is artificial. It's when nature doesn't work that you need to resort to things which are reasonably safe and reasonably effective.
I had two questions. So first, I wanted to know if like IVF actually helps. Like if some people get a lot of miscarriages. So is there a lower chance of getting a miscarriage when you are going through IVF? And the other question is for people who have PCOD or PCOS, because a lot of women today do have that those conditions. So I wanted to know if like they should start earlier or.
You'd like to take that, Vishesh?
Yeah. So your first question regarding miscarriages, we see many patients who have been trying to get pregnant naturally, but unfortunately end up with miscarriages. So in such couples, we like to do a detailed evaluation of both the partners to make sure to get to the root of the cause as to why is a miscarriage happening. But yes, we have a very good option which is called as PGTA, or something called as, in simple terms, biopsy of the embryo. Again, so the route through this is we go via IVF, and the embryos that are formed, we can actually test the embryos to find out if they are normal enough to implant. And hence we can reduce the chance of miscarriage. That's a very great way to do it. And your other question of if somebody is having PCOS, I feel it's all the more reason that if you're having either PCOS or endometriosis, all the more reason to freeze your eggs at an earlier age, because with these underlying conditions, age only worsens it. As such, because of PCOS and endometriosis, sometimes we see a suboptimal egg quality. So all the more reason to freeze your eggs at a younger age if this is.
Yeah, but endometriosis is also very difficult to diagnose, right?
Yes.
PCOS also is something now which is more common, so people are able to diagnose it, but endometriosis you don't find or diagnose everywhere.
Yeah.
Correct, you're absolutely right. It takes, studies say that on an average it takes 8 to 9 years for endometriosis to actually be diagnosed.
Wow, that's
So,
8 to 9 years of a lot of very painful
so
periods,
many women
right?
have a misdiagnosis.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the sad part. But nowadays we are having a lot of tests or blood tests, which have come into the market to help you understand if there is some component of endometriosis. But if you have this condition, it's always better to get yourself evaluated, and how you can do that, especially for endometriosis, is sometimes if it's severe, it comes up in the scan. Blood work, we are still doing a lot of research on it, but the most confirmatory way to understand if there is endometriosis or not is when you undergo a laparoscopy. That is when we put a camera inside your tummy to actually see if there are any endometriotic lesions.
So just to add, endometriosis is one condition, especially if you're getting operated for it. It's very apt to think about freezing your eggs prior to doing the surgery. However, it's not always easy to do that. because the very fact that you need a surgery, it's
Yeah.
either because the cysts are very big or it's so painful that sometimes you may not be able to sustain that entire process of 10 to 12 days. But then if you have undergone a surgery, maybe it's a better idea to think about it immediately after, once you're out in that recovery phase.
Right.
So that over a period of time, when endometriosis recurs, it does recur, right? And when it comes back, it's said that it comes back with a vengeance, back in full bloom. So before that happens, it's better to recover your eggs and freeze them.
Okay, so what is like the ideal age for somebody who has these conditions to start? Like what is the youngest anybody can start?
So for IVF, basically the youngest is 21 or 22. Okay, I mean generally girls who are, there are unfortunate cases where the girl may be younger and have certain problems. But 21 or 22 is considered as the youngest where you can start thinking about egg freezing.
And I think also, to your point, I think Prachi, when you evaluated whether natural is better or egg freezing and eventually IVF, I think one point that the doctor made was that it's not this or that. And I think I wish somebody had told me that at 27, because even I was like, oh, then natural, now once I want, I'll do later. But I think it's more about you always have the natural option,
Yeah.
right? So for example, if you
This one you may not
Correct.
always have.
Right? Like with me, I didn't freeze my eggs thinking when I want, because now I don't want kids. When I want, I'll do natural because that's better. But I think by the time I end up being 34, AMH level dropped and I was not able to conceive. And then naturally, then I had to go for IVF,
Yeah.
right? Versus if I had chosen to freeze my eggs, my IVF cycles wouldn't be needed. I would have frozen good quality eggs in time, right? And had that option, right? So you can still go for natural in spite of egg freezing being that insurance policy, right?
So you
That's
did
the
your
way.
process at 34.
I started at 34. That's
And
right.
what
34 to 37.
It took you with those many cycles?
Yes, yes. Because of less number of eggs.
It can take that long.
It can, no, because I also took breaks, right? Because I did 3 egg retrievals, I paused, changed doctor, then I went to some other doctor, 2 more egg retrievals, then I went
You also
abroad.
moved overseas and then
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
yeah.
And you conceived at 37 then.
Yeah, 38.
38, right? Yeah.
And age makes it harder to, I mean, of course it does in some cases, right? Because like you said, like the earlier you probably have your child, it's just kinder to the body. But how difficult or easy was it?
You mean conceiving?
Yeah, and just going through the pregnancy at that age and, postpartum and all of that.
So I think, like she said, right, I think till 45, human body is able to sort of, conceive in that sense. I think for me it is about, for me specifically, it was about eggs, right? So it took me a lot of egg retrievals to get good quality embryos. But once I had the embryo, I was able to conceive and then sort of, deliver.
Any more questions, Anvi?
Yeah, so considering you've been on the other side of the table, what are 3 things that you have built into Ruma based on your experience in a different way compared to what you went through?
So I think the number one thing that I felt very frustrated on when I was doing my IVF cycle was the waiting period, right? In terms of just waiting for doctors for like 3 hours, 4 hours. I would open my laptop and start making presentations, start working on Excel sheets, and the number would still not come. So I think here at Ruma, I think that's that one thing that we've ensured that, 0 to minimal waiting. Second, I think always had a lot of questions with regards to what are my chances, what can I do to improve my success rate, right? Because I was in that journey for a very long time and I never had answers. The doctor did not have time and I would keep Googling and Google would tell you to like do so many weird things to improve your success rate. And so I think here what we've tried to do is one, the Care Navigator, second, the app, third, the ability to chat,
Right.
and really on the app telling you what's next, what should you know, what to expect, and what will improve your chances. So we're actually just scientifically telling you each step of the way. And I think the third bit that really helped me, and we're trying to integrate that at Ruma, is a holistic approach to fertility. We don't think it's just about uterus, egg, sperm, but it's the whole human body. So focus on therapy, psychological counseling, your mental makeup when you're actually trying to conceive, nutrition, how healthy you're eating. That also impacts egg quality and ultimately outcomes.
Right.
Acupuncture, IV drip. So we've really made it a more holistic fertility solution than just about hormonal injections and the retrieval process.
Are we all done? Okay, great. Thank you so much, everyone, for coming in.
Thank you.
It means a lot.
Thank you, guys. So if you all need any consults, if you all want to do the AMH test, you can let Rashmi know and she can just guide you, or she can book it for you later as well.
They also have an optional test at home in case
Yes.
anyone wants to have them come home and do it.
Yes.
That's how I did mine last week. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this.
Thank you.
Thank you for a lovely chat.